Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, yWhales, wherever in the world you are today. So it is April 6th. We are through Q1, and Mr. Ginsler is throwing all sorts of amazing things out on Twitter, and he has just turned into this amazing everything's a security, and it's because he said so. Shockingly, even despite all this, the cryptocurrency markets are doing still very well. We saw Bitcoin drop a little bit below 28 on those comments, but then immediately come back. And so we're really seeing just a healthy market of people that really do believe in the long-term future of digital assets and digital works. And, that's why I'm really excited today is because, while Doge and some of these other ones may be backed by, pixie dust and hopes and dreams, there are a lot of people that really understand and believe in where digital assets and where the digitization of real world assets, as well as other kind of things that exist both in the digital and the physical world, are really going to have a dynamic change over the next few decades. So with me today, and I'm really excited, we've got another brand new startup, but it's, again, run by very experienced operators. So let's just go ahead and start with Elizabeth. I'd love to kind of get a little bit of your background of where you are, how you got here today.
Thanks, Jay. I started out in a completely different field. I studied international relations at Stanford, and I was focusing on arms control and disarmament. So something completely outside the realm of this current life choice. And then I went to graduate school and did international economics and aiming for the Foreign Service, but I ended up at Christie's, which was the most amazing change in the road. And what I learned was that I loved to merge business with the art world, and I've always been a big proponent of tech throughout. So merging all those three together has always been my dream. I left Christie's after about 8 years, went to another auction house for 4 years, went to an appraisal company that I turned around and built up for 18 years, and then founded Winston Art Group in 2010. So it's been a long and interesting road, seeing the art market from all the different angles.
Absolutely. Mr. Dekking.
Nanne Dekking. Hi. Hi, Jay. Yeah. So I'm actually an art historian, studied at the University of Amsterdam in the Netherlands. My jobs in the Netherlands were initially very scholarly jobs. I worked for the Dutch royal family, helping them to create a catalog of their portrait collection. They had many portraits, as you can imagine. And I moved to New York in 96, sort of reinventing myself, which is so nice about the United States that you can do it here, actually. And I started an art advisory office company, very much focused on attribution, not so much attribution, but provenance issues. In those days, for the first time, people started to realize that sometimes someone sells an artwork without clear title. There can be a lien on the artwork. It can be that the artwork was previously owned in the Second World War or pre-Second World War by a Jewish family, and that, thank God, there are now ways for the rightful owners to claim back the artwork. So that became my little niche, provenance research, and making sure that people could trust the artwork, so to say, if it came to the provenance of the piece. Then I started more an advisory in acquiring art, helping collectors in buying art, doing a lot of due diligence, and especially, of course, on the provenance, because that always remained our strength. And then I joined a very big art dealership called the Wildenstein Gallery. In those days, we're talking about like 99. They were by far the largest dealership at that time in the world. From my specialism in French Impressionism actually came in handy working for the Wildenstein. They had a huge collection of French Impressionist art. And after Wildenstein, I joined Sotheby's and became the worldwide head of private sales of that company, of this auction house, and vice chairman of the company. But what I had learned during my career in the art market is that there are very special attributes that contribute value to an artwork. And they're very consistent. That has also been the business of Liz in the years that she was in the art market, that you realize, of course, provenance is very, very important, authenticity. But there are many more attributes that are a little bit more complex that people who are not insiders in this market will easily understand. Needless to say, previous sales, previous prices are very interesting, of course, but also not only was the previous owner a legal entity that could engage in the art market, but also was it someone who was already a famous collector or someone who became a famous collector? So there are a lot of attributes that are not necessarily easy to understand that actually contribute value. How did tech came into my life? Through a previous collector. One of my biggest clients was always Hasso Plattner, who built up a huge collection of French Impressionist art, which is public knowledge. Otherwise, I would never talk about a client. But Hasso was one of the founders of a tech company, of SAP, and he always said, Nanne, there needs to be a repository of trusted artworks, where it's not only that I have to trust Nanne Dekking when I buy art, but that I can also see what was the basis of Nanne Dekking's assessment for me to buy this artwork. And usually when I would tell him to buy an artwork, I said the artwork has been in a public collection. It has once been in a big exhibition at the Orsay in France, for example, or an independent scholar has written about the artwork. So a lot of work that Liz and her team actually do as the largest independent appraisal firm in the world is the kind of information that collectors like to have before they start to trust Nanne Dekking. And that became this repository called Artory. We're using blockchain technology. We tokenize underlying trust information for indeed real world assets. We're going to talk about that. In our case, fine art. So that's my background.
That's a really amazing story from the two of you, and I can absolutely understand how you got so excited to partner together. And the reality is I'm not an art collector, so I'm not going to be any help here, but I do collect a number of other things, and some are old, some are new. But the reality is that I love when I have a true, expert explain to me, not just, hey, here's this, but the stories behind it. And that's really
right.
what drives us to these may be inanimate objects, but some of them have, centuries of true history and stories behind them that are irreplaceable.
Exactly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Fabulous. Real quick, I've got an amazing co-host with me today, Sue Marks, as always. Sue, just a quick intro, because you are, an arts lover of many different types of the arts, and just a quick background on yourself would be fabulous.
Well, I'm a serial entrepreneur and recently turned the CEO role of the company I founded to our COO, and now have full time to devote to Web3, digital art, NFTs, etc. And Liz and Nanne, maybe what you can tell our audience is, why should they care about tokenization? I mean, I think it's easy to get why you would care about Provenance. You're buying $1 million piece of art, and you wouldn't buy a $30,000 car without a title and registration, right? But what does the tokenization bring? How do you explain that to people that aren't familiar with Web3?
It's a great question, and Liz will actually answer most of this question, but let me start with the tokenization part, because I don't believe technology ever helps when the underlying information is not trustworthy, whether you use blockchain or whatever technology. There's another thing that also makes people hesitant to use technology is if you have to do a lot of additional workflows to use the technology. So that's actually why I do believe that Winston and Artory are such a great match. So for us, it was very important to understand there is a technology that can actually help a lot in giving reassurance that the underlying asset can be trusted, because it actually captures trust information. But then you need to find the partners you can trust. It can never be Artory who says, oh, this is a trusted artwork, because we used blockchain technology. So what we started doing was start to create a repository of trusted artworks, because we always told our partners to sign off on all that information, cryptographically sign off. So Christie's and Sotheby's have worked with us. One of the largest auctions of American art that ever took place in the history of this country was actually recorded on blockchain. The Ebsworth collection at Christie's, the first auction that ever was recorded on the blockchain by Artory. Liz and I have been knowing each other for a long time in the art market, because we were working on different sides of the market. Liz was always the independent person, very often working for the same clients as I had, who would look at the information that I would give to a client. And of course, I was an art dealer. Let's not forget it. I was selling art. And I'm not saying that you necessarily lie when you want to sell something. but it's a different angle. And it's a different kind of emphasizing certain trust information if you want to sell something. So Liz and I actually collaborated really well, not because we collaborated really well. I'm doing this because I see Liz on my lower right. But she was actually giving additional information to someone who wanted to buy an artwork. And her angle was much more independent than mine. So while we were talking, we were always talking a lot. Liz was very much interested in technology. I have huge respect for what she built with Winston. And then we realized if an artwork has to be registered, what we called, if you want a blockchain registration of an artwork, why not use the current workflows of the Winston team, where someone comes to Winston, they will check all the trust information anyway. And there is actually now a way that someone can register an artwork or create a token of an artwork by going through our systems in a fully encrypted way and then become part of the regular workflow of Winston. And that creates that token. And then Liz and I started talking about, look, what's happening in the space. People are looking at fractionalized ownership of art. And we realized that expertise, the exceptional domain expertise, is so important in this space. If you want to create new products, you want to make sure that people engage, new audiences engage with the right kind of art, and not, if I may disrespectfully say it, sort of the leftovers of the art market that the art market can sell. And Liz can easily pick up from there, because that's very much what Winston does. They have a completely different relationship with art, so to say, and the people owning art.
Yeah, let me jump in and say, we are the largest independent art advisory and appraisal firm in the U.S. So what our job for our clients is to be their advocate. And there are two issues in the art market that clients always talk about when they're thinking about art as an asset class, which is increasingly what they're talking about. One is illiquidity, and the second is opacity. The art market is really opaque. So you really have to take on faith, which we don't like. We'd rather have people take on trust, and that's what we do. So we do 54 different items of due diligence before we purchase anything for a client. When we talk about tokenization, we can give that information to Nanne's team at Artory, and they're going to register that and provide a token. That token is on blockchain. That makes that work much more interesting than a work that doesn't have all that due diligence done. So that's making it less opaque. Mm-hmm. In terms of tokenization for something like the art fund we're doing, we believe that's the future. Not only is there a big market for regular shares of an art fund, but tokens are going to be increasingly important. And that relates to the second data point I was talking about, and that's that illiquidity. Because the art market is traditionally thought of as being illiquid, it's not traded on a day-to-day basis like equities. You need a way to increase the ability for clients to make that investment liquid. And by having a token that can be traded outside of the trading of the fund, mm-hmm. that's going to mm-hmm. make that work of art much more mm-hmm. liquid. And that's exciting. That's fabulous. And that's how we work so closely together, Nanne and I.
And that's what we're really looking into. Sorry, Jay. Yeah, what we're really looking into is, we all know digital trading is going to happen, right? We're talking for a Web3 audience. But we also know that it's nascent currently. So we make sure when we tokenize Liz's trust information, and we make sure, we're going to show you some slides where we can actually show you how we do that. But we make sure that our asset tokens reference to security tokens, right? We want to make sure that the asset is now actionable. Not necessarily part of an art fund, but Liz and the team create these diversified portfolios also to make sure that people don't take too much risk, right? You want to make sure that you don't put all your eggs in one basket by just having them have a share of one very expensive artwork that maybe Basil should buy, but you really want to fractionalize it and then create enthuse a whole new audience of, let's say, more financial people, or people want to take part of this new market or the upside of the art market. Not necessarily. That's maybe a risk a billionaire should take, but we want to make sure that it's a diversified portfolio with a lot of risk mitigation in the way that Liz and the team build up the collection. But maybe for the more let's say the people who believe in Web3, we also want to make sure that the cap table will be synchronized, right, when secondary trading takes place. So we have to be very careful in the way we tokenize the asset and how they can reference to security tokens. And for that, we talk to very many partners. I mean, not only Securitize, with whom we collaborate currently. We look at Tokeny. We're very much part of the whole ecosystem of digital trading. Not because Liz and I cannot create that market, right? We cannot create the distribution, but our asset tokens need to be fully integratable with the security tokens of the future. So maybe this is a good moment, Liz, to pull up some slides, right? And I know Jay kindly wants to do it for us.
Absolutely. Look at this. I can do lots of things. One of those including showing some slides for you. Yeah, walk us through these. And one of the things I really want to just kind of, number one, that was a really great kind of explanation of what you do, but I also want to say how complicated this is. And I'm not talking about the technology. The blockchain to us, that's the easy part of this. The complicated part is, really the expertise that you bring, and your expertise is very hard to find, as you very well know. The concepts of being able to take that education, that history and the really all of the thoughts that you have and bring it onto blockchain where it can live forever. Like that's the value of the technology bridging this gap. And so I'm really excited about this. So please continue.
Thank you. Well, I mean, Liz will definitely talk about this slide and the market we're tapping into, but maybe I can say for Liz and understanding the opportunity of the joint venture is Sotheby's, for example, sells $5 billion of art, Christie $7 billion, and Liz and the team usually appraise $10 billion of art. So that gives you, it's not only domain expertise, it's also the sheer volume of the tradable art that they see and appraise that makes them see how this asset class needs to be treated. Sorry, Liz, that I can't help myself. I wanted to say that I'm in all the teams, so that's why. Yeah.
This is why my Nana and I work so well together. We have so much to talk about all the time. The market is so fabulous. I mean, if you think that there are $3 trillion worth of art held globally in collections, that's a pretty incredible number. And I think in 2021, the art was about 4.5% of the GDP in the U.S. I mean, it's a big number. So people who are out there thinking, why is this so interesting? It's because it's a big asset class, and we're seeing people move money from their equities, from their real estate, from every other collecting class into the art market because they see it has incredible growth potential. And I think you can see there in that chart on the bottom, that's a chart that Art Price put together showing that the top 100 artists grew in exponentially faster over the past 20 years than the S&P. So that doesn't mean that every artwork is going to go up in value over time, but it means you have to have the knowledge, which we do at Winston Art Group. We have an incredible depth of knowledge, and then put that together with Nana and his tech team to get those digital tokens, and you have something really powerful in the art market. The market is really skewed now towards contemporary art. That's really where all the action's happening, and you can see on the right-hand side an emerging artist that was purchased for under $13,000 in 2019, turned over at auction for almost $900,000 2 years later. So this is what's happening in the market. You see a huge increase in selected emerging artists. You see a constant growth in the top end of the blue chip market. So it's a really, really exciting time to be involved with the art market and to pull tech in to really make it something that is that gives the market the sense of security.
The thing I love about this chart is it really showcases just how much the world has continued to change around, art. But the basics are, still there. And I don't understand those basics, but that's where it becomes so exciting to individuals like yourselves and all the collectors out there, is because you can adopt new technologies to, whether this is a painting or photography or anything else, the mediums are relatively the same. But again, bridging that gap and being able to create more liquidity, that's the number one challenge of these things: faster turns and more secure levels of ownership.
Yeah, and Jay, it's actually, as always in life, it's a little bit more complex than the chart. And I think that's where domain expertise comes in.
Of
I mean,
course.
Liz and I have seen efforts to fractalize, for example, a work from Picasso or several works from Picasso. And Picasso is an amazing artist, and Picasso can be a huge opportunity in a fund. But even Picasso sometimes painted artworks that actually cannot sell because they were just not good enough, or for different reasons. Something happened that the art market never picked up on that artwork. So even if you talk about artworks that in the stat or in the graph that we just look at would definitely show how uncorrelated art is as an asset class to the stock market, even then you need domain expertise and real expertise of the market to see, are we dealing with the objects that can be traded more easily than other objects, although it may be a blue chip name, you know? I mean, Liz and I always talk about it when we go to art fairs together, is our heart can be lured into a certain booth from a certain gallery because we see an artwork that we love. But maybe for the art fund with a different cap on, which is, by the way, Liz's job, right? She and her team are independent. They have to buy the art when we raise the money for the fund. But with a different hat on as being in charge of an art fund, you will most likely go to another gallery that already has a track record of discovering certain artists at an early stage. So again, you know, it's not only emotions, it's not only what you like, it's making informed decisions, and you have to make informed decisions for your clients. And we haven't even spoken of the database yet, but that's coming later. But maybe the next slide would be great.
That's what I want to add one more thing too, and this isn't to say that that collectors who are buying for their own passion and who buy something they love, that's fabulous. This is something, we're talking about something that's going to only increase the size of the art market because it's bringing in people who perhaps don't want to have their own collections, don't have the funds to have their own collections, but want to get something, want to be part of something bigger and something that they can then trade and keep liquid.
Absolutely.
So all of this information then becomes part of the asset, doesn't it? The whole story behind the art or the collectible becomes part of its mystique, part of its value.
Right.
You're absolutely right, and that's the information that is tokenized by Nanne's team, and that is so important for the next owner to have.
Yes, Sue and Jay, you're now looking at just a few examples of artwork that Artory has tokenized in the past. I'm particularly proud of the first one, this beautiful sculpture. There it was actually a very renowned gallery in decorative art in Paris that collaborated with Christie's on a sale, and they insisted on Artory tokenizing all the artworks that were being sold at Christie's, because the provenance of these 18th century pieces is so impeccable. They've done so much research on the provenance that was actually a very important attribute to the valuation and the value of these pieces. So Galerie Steinitz collaborated together with Christie's, and we got all the information from Christie's and the Galerie Steinitz to tokenize it with the underlying asset. So there you have the first tokenized decorative piece on blockchain. The second is also the first. It's the first old master painting that was actually registered on blockchain by us. It's a Botticelli that was sold at Sotheby's. Again, all the trust information created by Sotheby's. We have an API in place with Sotheby's, and all the trust information goes into our system. So again, no additional workflow, just a regular workflow, and we scoop it up in what we call our due diligence tool. And now this Botticelli has a permanent record on the blockchain. The third is actually a piece that I own. I love it. It's a Kehinda Wiley. And me and my partner, we collect art mostly from African-American artists. And we actually submitted this through the Artory portal in a fully encrypted way to Liz and her team. And they did due diligence. And thank God we passed the test. Apparently we happen to be the rightful owners of the piece. And that created a token created by us, but based on appraisal information of Winston Art Group. So there you have it. These are just a few examples.
Yeah, and what I love about, again, to me, blockchain is so adaptable to so many different aspects and asset classes around the world.
Right.
Some that we haven't even invented yet, and some that have been lost to time that may be able to come back from these things. And there's so many pieces of art in basements. We worked on a project probably a couple of years ago where they were trying to pull all this art out of these museums basements that nobody even knew what they were. And the reality was that something as simple as cataloging on the blockchain, which is exactly what you're doing, would allow somebody 100 years from now to at least have some semblance of being able to pull something out where there's more data than just a little scribble on the back or whatnot. The ability to put true petabytes of data up in a cloud and have it sustained forever is an amazing concept.
You're
Yeah, you're
absolutely
so right. Yeah. I think art is an ideal object to be tokenized, actually. But again, let's not create a new bubble. Let's do it in the right way. Let's make sure that real trust partners cryptographically sign off on the information. And that's always my biggest worry. You have people already looking at the art market and all the opportunities for art lending, and you name it, without even understanding the underlying asset. And let's not create a market of make believe. Let's just be factual, realistic, and boring. I mean, Liz and I are among the most boring people in the world. So
thanks, Donald.
Listen, I'm competing for that as well. So please, I hope it's an open competition.
Out here, yeah.
I was in Tulum, Mexico last week, and I was asleep in bed by like 9:30 at night every night.
Oh man,
no parties.
I would do this. Yeah.
So I'm wondering.
Maybe the next.
Absolutely.
Yeah. This is to show you how business as usual can actually be used, can be applied for new technology. Because what you see here is literally what happens. Right? There's an artwork owner. You have the Winston Art Group. We should work on that image, Liz. I'm so sorry, but you have someone who just does the job, right? There's usually a whole group of people, actually. As Liz said, there are 50 point of reference that they check. All the due diligence is done. But we actually created a due diligence tool with the incredible help of the Winston team in telling us exactly what kind of due diligence they do, what kind of digital information they create, and that digital creation can be digitized and can actually enter the blockchain by our due diligence tool. And that creates two things. It creates more like a deed, which is the token. That's the most important information about the artwork, such as ownership information. By the way, Artory cannot see anything, right? As you know, as an insider, people believe everything is public with blockchain. Well, first of all, everything is hashed. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have access to that information, you can't see it. But the token is connected to a smart contract, and the smart contract is always appendable. That's the nature of the smart contracts, and that actually has all the due diligence information. And as you can imagine, if an artwork becomes actionable, so to say, if it would enter, for example, an art fund, it's very important to know where's the custody, who's the custodian of the artworks. Who is allowed to see the artwork, inspect the artwork. So all that information is appendable and can be shared with the partners who, for example, invest in a tokenized way, where you see the security token coming up, it's a little bit further down. We call it a platform because a security token holder will actually have to enter our platform, and they have access to this information, and then they can see either the attestations that have been created. So the Winston Art Group has seen a specific artwork in this and that price range. Not necessarily, maybe for Sue, that's good to understand. We don't necessarily share all the artworks that will be, for example, in a $250 million fund, because the fund needs to ultimately sell these artworks. And you don't want to hang an artwork above the art market. Oh, this is coming your way. This is coming your way. If the surprise element is gone, that will not have a good effect on the price. But there's enough you can show your investors that there is actually an attestation of that artwork. There is sorry, Jay,
Yeah.
yes, sorry.
No, the thing I want to point out that's the most amazing to this is right now in blockchain,
Yeah,
again, from a technical side, everyone goes, I have this thing and I'm going to put it on chain. And I'm just going to say that if you need information, you're going to have to contact me. Like, let me know and I'll let you know everything I have. And that doesn't work because we don't sometimes know who you are and everything else. And this robust flow, which is again the showcase of professional entrepreneurs and professional business people, really showcases how much time, energy, and effort you went into this to make sure that not only is the information relevant and true, but also that it's accessible later by all future owners who want to add to this chain of record, and really continue to increase the value. And that's something that I don't see quite often in a lot of blockchain projects. It's like, hey, I can spin up a smart contract and this, here you go. Everyone that's decentralized, figure it out. This is a very robust workflow that seems very Web 2, but with the adaptations into Web 3, which is absolutely why we're here. And I love this.
Yeah, exactly. It's a hybrid between Web 2 and Web 3 and actual work that has been done, so you go from digital to Web 2 to Web 3. And Liz and I are very closely monitoring the Web 3 world. That's also why we always make sure that these asset tokens can reference to security tokens, because then the security token owners who own shares in the fund through the means of tokens can actually have access, access to the tokenized underlying information. So yeah, that's how it works. And then of course, a little bit further down the line, you see, unfortunately these days, the regulator will not allow you to have these artworks shown in public. They will have to be in a secure warehouse for now, but we have many conversations with regulators to see if we can maybe change that, and artworks could go to museums, for example, on loan. But at the end of the road, what you see, there will ultimately be marketplaces and financial institutions that we cannot predict yet. But we want to make sure that we make these artworks actionable, as I said. And I'm so incredibly grateful that Liz and Winston understand how important the role is of an independent appraisal company like theirs to be involved in this kind of asset tokenization.
Amazing.
So just quickly for our audience, we're talking about Winston Art, Artory, individual provenance research, tokenization, and the fund, the art fund. Is that correct? Which is where you can invest in, is it fractionalized? Is that what you would call it, Elizabeth?
Yes, it's a fractionalized bucket of artworks. So it's a way to mitigate risk at the same time.
And the tokenization that would provide the liquidity.
That's correct. Yeah, exactly. And so the partners are Winston Art Group, largest independent appraisal and advisory firm in the U.S., Artory, the most important tech art
Platform.
And then we came together at Artory Winston, that's our joint venture, to do this art fund, the tokenization, the due diligence, the tokens, and so on.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. And what we did is, we know that digital trading will take some time. So Liz and I very, very much wanted to make sure that also traditional, between brackets, there's nothing traditional about these folks. They're just not investing through tokens. So we created a master fund, a Bermuda corporation, ISA Bermuda corporation, which is the way for investors, family funds, etc. We created it in a way that institutional investors can invest in this fund, because it's actually a completely administered fund. Apex, the largest fund administrator in the world, is the administrator of the fund. There is an auditor, Spicer Jeffries is our auditor. They're the best artwork custodian, Volvo, is involved. So we did everything we could to make sure that people who really want to invest in art from an institutional point of view can invest in this. So this is what you now see, is only the is only the technology and all the domain expertise of Winston, which is all incorporated in the flow. But the regulatory framework is equally important to us because we're the only administered fund. It's hard to believe, but the other art funds are not administered.
Wow.
It's very easy to believe. Very few people actually follow the rules.
Well, I don't want to say they don't follow the rules, but we just want to make sure that Liz and I have a plan. We want to make art accessible to people who don't necessarily know the asset class. The fact that a lot of people are still reluctant to walk into Sotheby's or Christie's. And even when I have a little cold, I don't necessarily want to go to a gallery because it's a rather imposing world, So we want to open up that world for people and show them information about art in a way that they actually start to trust it or start to understand it. And maybe the last we can do really fast, and then we can just go back to the conversation, but maybe the last couple of slides. Actually, the next slide is very much a Liz slide, by the way. So, yeah.
Yeah, that just shows some of the due diligence that we do. It's so important because we know clients have a passion for art, but we're the ones that stand behind that work of art and say, yes, this is something that you should invest in. And something that's coming up more and more is AML, KYC, anti-money laundering, and know your customer. We take a really strong stand on making sure that everything we handle is AML and KYC compliant, and that we're going to see more and more in the future.
Amazing.
And a big part of the Winston Art Group's task is, of course, also when they do valuation, is to look at historical data at the art market, right? So for us, what Artory has done is we acquired the largest data set like 3 years ago in the art market if it comes to historical data, historical transaction database. So all the public sales are captured in that database. We worked really hard not only to grow that database, but to make well-informed decisions in which markets are we going to follow. And we were very lucky because the database is used by Claire McAndrew, and she writes the UBS Art Basel report, which in our world is the Bible, right? Once a year there's the Art Basel report, and everyone in the art market looks at it, to look at trends, how much art was sold in specific countries, continents, what kind of art, what echelon of the market did well and what did not. And that's all captured by us in the database. And because Claire McAndrew started using this 4 or 5 years ago for the Art Basel report, she also helped us in looking at, to make well-informed decision in what kind of data are we going to use. And then completely separate for us, and it will always be separate from us, we have no insight in those data, but it helps the investor in our funds. Liz and her team have their data, proprietary data, cannot be used by us. But Liz, you maybe can say that because
we have collected hundreds of thousands of data points of private and dealer sales. So we have an incredible database of information that's not publicly accessible, and that's really important when we're doing our due diligence.
So
And
does that
definitely-
help you as you're looking to buy art for the fund? Does that help you, or what helps you identify undiscovered artists yet? Your example earlier showed an enormous return on investment. What kinds of things do you look for that would signal potential in an undiscovered artist?
That's a great question.
It's like you're an amazing stock picker.
Yeah, exactly. We look at the gallery because certain galleries have great track records with emerging artists. We look at the artists themselves and we see, do they have some kind of unique style or a unique message that resonates? We look at who's collecting that artist. Is it which private collectors, which institutions? What are the upcoming exhibitions? Is there a word on the street that artist is going to be picked up by a big mega gallery? We're looking at everything.
I think I see an AI machine learning project here.
Yeah, no, I mean, AI is going to be really helpful with that. There are some really interesting companies that are starting to use AI to try and gather that sort of information together. You really need the connoisseurship of a person or of a group or people who know the market and who know the artists, who can talk to the artists in person and the dealers and so on. But AI is going to be extremely helpful going forward, without question.
So on
definitely.
this slide, can you tell us why you picked the two artists? I think that's a Calder, isn't it? And I don't
It
know
is a
the other one.
Calder.
Why did you
Yeah,
pick those? And what's
well,
the other one, and why did you pick them?
20th century design is a big
I
area
see.
of collecting now, and that was a work that we had
Yeah.
sold for a client. And of course, Calder is an icon of the 20th
Yes.
century, and always stays strong and
That
valuable.
would be sort of a blue chip artwork in a fund, the Calder, at the
Mhm.
highest echelon of the higher echelon of the market. Yeah.
Exactly.
Awesome.
Maybe the next slide, Joe. Jay, sorry.
Absolutely. There
So
we
here
go.
you
This,
see this.
this
We
more looks
actually-
more like my language.
I'm looking at the left, and you're looking at the right on this slide, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, just to show how, in this case, we used Algorand. We're blockchain agnostic, but we actually started working with Algorand for more the environment. They were the first who came up with a more eco-responsible way to use blockchain, and that triggered us to start working with Algorand. Great people, by the way. But we don't only work with Algorand, of course. But this was actually Algorand that we use to pick up all the due diligence that's done by the Winston Art Group. So here you see actual work, you see hashes, you see how it enters the blockchain, and maybe you go to the next slide, Jay, if you wish, if you can. Yeah, and all that sort of unreadable language ultimately leads, and if you go to the next slide, it just leads to, there's a different way you can use this, right? I mean, if you have the key to unlock the hashed information that's on the blockchain, it spits out something that looks very much like a report that Winston would create. So there's a lot you can do there. And as I said, we firmly believe in working with partners like Liz, and actually we so much believe that we have the right partner that we're not looking for another partner. But if you look at the sheer volume of what they do and the serious work they do, then I believe you can create enough trust to look at a way to create new markets. And new markets, as and Liz said it so well, we don't believe we're disrupting the art market. The art market works really well. It's maybe a relatively small market in the scheme of things. And especially if you look at people looking at the digital market, everybody immediately talks about 7 trillion, 10 trillion, God knows how many trillions. Let it be just a little bit less than that. But if we can open up this market to a new kind of investors who are more tech savvy, who are really interested in real world assets and are a little wary of all the digital products they could acquire the last couple of years, I think, and you have risk mitigation in place, I think we're up to something there, which is exciting.
Yeah, to me, the concept of decentralization and really being able to globally create new asset class markets. You guys, this is an asset class. You guys have it's $3 trillion. You're there.
Right.
The biggest difference though is it's very hard for someone who does not have friends or does not understand the art world. And I can say that as I have lots of friends in the art world. I've taken a peek inside a few times and I don't understand it. It's a different language of which I don't speak, but I do speak financials. And I am absolutely interested in various forms of asset classes. I bought various NFTs that were related to fine art. I absolutely believe and understand, and whether it's a pure digital work or whether it's a physical work that's represented on chain, I think it's the exact same thing. And I think that is really where the Gen Zs are going to be kind of really pushing over the next few decades, that they don't understand the difference between physical and digital, but more importantly, what they need to understand is the idea of true ownership, that whatever it is, they need to actually have ownership. They absolutely need to have, a clear title, as Sue relayed to, and Nan, you said very, very clearly, that it needs to be something that they can invest in. And then digitization opens up fractionalization. And that to me is one of the most amazing parts of what we're talking about here. Not everyone can afford $1 million painting, but there's a lot of art clubs and investment clubs that do have, absolutely have $1 million to invest. But the concept of showing up and trying to, coordinate 100 people that want to purchase $1 million, piece of art is a very hard thing to do in the real world. But on blockchain, through DAOs and really through smart contracts, it's very easy to do. And then coordinating with a firm like yours, it makes so much sense.
What we found interesting, Jay and Sue, is that we've also been talking to investors in the fund who said, I'm actually now exposed to different collecting categories because you create this diversified portfolio. And I'm actually only interested in very young artists and emerging artists. But now I also have exposure in blue chip art, mid-career artists, etc. So they see that as an interesting opportunity to invest in different kind of art through the fund.
It is something that we really want to say again, and that is that we're using tech as a tool to change an idea of faith in the people who are selling the art or putting the art fund together or doing anything in the art world, move that into trust. And the only way you can move it into trust is by having this due diligence tool that actually has that trusted information in it. And it's tangible, you can see it.
Really an amazing interview so far. And again, I love talking about topics of which I have no idea. I cannot speak intelligently about art, but I can absolutely talk intelligently about the technology and really about what it takes to bring liquidity to an asset class. And that's one of the things that when we were talking about, commercial real estate, which I am very experienced in, it really suffers from a lot of the same problems that you just described with the art world, which is number one, is the title clear? Great. Two, what is the actual condition and status and real value of this piece? And then lastly is, what am I able to understand about the history of that building, which is the exact same thing you're doing on art. And I think that both of these asset classes are really paired exactly similar. And we know that both are really working on the legal way to have inroads here. That being said, the other part of this that's so interesting to me is the ability to have centuries of data stored on chain for people long past us to actually be able to use. I mean, less than a fraction of a percent of history has been recorded, about these pieces of art or about properties or about anything else. So I'd love to hear, Liz, you're a data geek, kind of a little bit about what you guys are focused on and how that's going to be used in the future.
Sure. And there are various aspects of data, of course. There is the data that we have in our database, which is incredible information that's so important for clients to know. Why is this particular work better than that other work by the same artist? Mm-hmm. And that's data. That's all mm-hmm. data. Its condition, its size, its medium, its style, its who owned it before, is its title clear, how quickly has it traded in the market? You want to see something fresh to the market, and so many other points. Those are all really important data that we use from our database, and we work with Nanne with his database to make sure all that data is in there for clients so that they can tell why is this work better than that work.
With a very clear iron wall, right? Artory is never able of looking into Winston's data. We can't, because that would basically be the end of the whole product. We have a different data set. We have a transaction database, like 40 million transaction records, which we actually also use. As I said, it's used by Claire McAndrew for the Art Basel, UBS Art Basel reports. It's a very solid data set, the most solid in the business. The way we use it is next to what Liz does with her team. We want to use the data set to do valuations as well, although we are clever enough to see when there's a red flag when you don't have enough data, it will immediately be passed on by Liz and the team to do valuations. Because when these assets are tokenized and digital trading takes place and secondary trading of these tokens takes place, there needs to be a very regular update on the valuation. Because, of course, these tokens will have a certain value at a certain moment. And we see a big part of that in the future being able to use our data for. I mean, I love data, but I'm also well informed enough in the art market to know that our database may be amazing. It's also just the start. And quite often we may just use the expert, not just. It's almost like the experts are not better than any data set, but we need real experts to check what does the database tells us, what does the database inform us, and how we can use it. It's maybe just a starting point for Liz's group to start working. And currently the database is used, which is really very nice, for risk analysis on artworks that Liz and the group want to buy. What do our data, the Artory data, tells Liz's group as a risk assessment? If Kenda Wiley, for example, what do the historical records tell you? What do they inform you for Liz and the group to see should be included in the art fund or not. And of course, they're more clever than data, but it gives them a very nice starting point of immediately seeing, okay, that's what happened to yWhales over the last 8 years at auction. It's always a good beginning, starting point.
Amazing, amazing. So as we bring this to a close, I'd love, Sue, to for you to really wrap this all up, because again, you have so much more experience in the art world, and just as much experience in blockchain as well, because you have a number of projects under your belt.
Love that.
Liz and it's the richness of what you're bringing to people, whether they are more experienced than most of us or are just learning. All of that history that you've collected on these pieces of art is amazing and educational, and I think helps all of us appreciate each individual piece of art even more. And then the transaction data, taking that history and looking at what's happening currently, it's an amazing project that combines art and science, art and technology. And I think, Liz, you said it, that a collector may be younger or newer and may be collecting things at a certain price point, but then to diversify his or her portfolio, to buy into masters or more mature artists through the fund. I had never thought about thinking of this asset class as a portfolio of different kinds. So it's been a great conversation today. Thank you.
Amazing, amazing. Yeah, one of the things I just love is, again, the fact that we're in a very old asset class, but again, applying new technology. And we did see, and I'd love, just real quick as we bring this to a close, to hear you two opinions on this, is I remember the days when eBay showed up, and people were just like, either they loved it or they hated it and went back and forth. But at the end of the day, it was a net positive for artwork, for collectibles, and for so many things, because it gave so much more exposure than people didn't know where to walk into an auction house. And I feel like we're at one of those cusps again, where you can, we've already gotten to the point where you can bid on things and see them all over the world. That's been done times over. But now to be able to validate and verify and make sure that what you're bidding on really is what you want to buy prior to hitting that bid button is a big piece. Because right now, if you buy something on eBay and it's wrong, you might be able to correct it. You're going to go through that. But the opportunity cost of, you may have missed out on something else during the months if you've had to unwind this transaction, that's a big thing that keeps people away from it. But if you know day one, here's the history, here's what I'm bidding on, here's why it's so important, that gives more confidence and brings higher prices at auction, correct?
Absolutely.
Right. No, agreed on that. And I always say Liz and her group make art buyers more informed, art owners more informed. When we add a level of technology to that, you can enter new markets with the assets that are actually as good as they can be. And that has been my biggest worry. When I see new technology, you always see people who smell an opportunity because they think, oh my gosh, the art market, it's opaque, it's this and that, let's make some money there. It's not that easy. You need a little bit of gray hair, you need a little bit of expertise to really inform people well on this relatively unique asset class with a lot of opportunities, really.
That's fabulous. That's fabulous. So for anyone that wants to know more, they want to buy art, they want to list art, they want to just get in, geek out with you guys on some data, where can they find you and learn more?
Maybe the best starting point is artory-winston.com, artorywinston.com. Or go to the Winston Art Group website or to the Artory website. Ultimately, we all lead to Artory Winston because that's the result of our joint venture, but we're different companies, of course. So I think you can have a lot of fun on whatever website you go, and you will learn a lot on the Winston website, the Artory website, or the Artory Winston website.
Well, congratulations to the two of you. Really exciting. And again,
so much.
Just at the birth of a new asset class with one of the oldest asset classes in existence. So thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
yWhales, this is Artory Winston, and Sue, thank you so much for coming in and co-hosting with me.
Thanks, Jay.
We'll see you guys next time.
Thank you, Jay. Thank you, Sue.
See you soon.